Yo! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames, and I'm back again with another Real Talk video. This time, we're going to be talking about the biggest game of September, and that is, of course, Hollow Knight Silksong. This is some footage from E3 2019 from Nintendo Treehouse, just, for full disclosure here. But yeah, there's been some interesting discussion that came out from, I guess, the media in light of its very quick announcement or release announcement. Where, we've been sitting here waiting for years and years. When's it come out? When's it going to come out? Is it ever coming out? Blah, blah, blah. And then the 2 weeks, they just all right, it'll be 2 weeks. September 4th, it's out. Done. And some people have, there was some concern, I should say, rightly so, from some people about that. Is this good? Is this good for the industry to sort of kind of unceremoniously dump this onto the internet, just dump it onto just the world at large? I think a lot of people who have been looking for this game don't really care. They're just happy that it's got a release date, So I mean, there's really, I don't think there's really any debate there about that. We're just happy it's here, and hey, we don't have to wait much longer. But I think there is something to be said a little bit about. A lot of us were kind of wondering if it was just going to be a shadow drop, just because of the nature of okay, it's it feels like it's just about done, any moment now. Is it just going to we're just going to wake up one day and here it is, Silksong. But I think there's also the second part of this story has been the price of the game, which is really cheap, actually. I mean, it's $19.99. Now that's not oh my god, they're giving it away for free, but it is definitely a little bit on the lower end, especially for a game that a lot of us thought was gonna be at least $30, maybe even $40. But one of the sort of kind of disadvantages of this game is how much it will affect every game releasing around. Now, we've had multiple games like Baby Steps get delayed because of it. And there was an article that came out of Polygon by Patricia Hernandez that basically kind of painted a sort of hey, this kind of disrupted the whole cycle, I guess you could say, news cycle or whatever. Because we had all these coverage of games that are coming out literally on the same day or the day before, the day after, and those reviews now have to maybe possibly be put on hold. And some people are well, why does that have to affect other games? And it's well, frankly, when you're writing for media, you're making media, content creation of any sort, you kind of got to go to where people want to listen. People are interested in Silksong way more than they're interested in anything else. So having sort of just 2 weeks, hey, it's here, and it's also coming out around the same time as a bunch of other stuff you had planned. Yeah, good luck. Personally, I kind of feel like this is just sort of this is just sort of the bed you kind of make when a game sort of blows up the way that something like Silksong blows up. I think you just kind of have to be ready at any point. Now, sure, it would be nice if there was a lot more lead up. My personal feeling on Silksong from the get-go has always been that I'm sure this game will be great. I do think that Team Cherry could have been a little more forthcoming with what was going on with the development, because it went radio silent for quite a long time. Now, in an interview with Jason Schreier, they did kind of state that the reason they went radio silent was because they also didn't want to constantly keep updating people, telling them well, the development's going well, we're just trucking away at it, don't mind us, kind of thing. And they thought it would sour people on the whole experience if they were just constantly updating them, but also never actually giving them a release date. And there's definitely some truth to that, where you have to sit there and wonder and think about it. Okay, yeah, if they were constantly updating, saying yeah, things are going smooth, because that's kind of the weird thing about this game, is that development was smooth, actually, even though it's been a long time, but it's smooth. The reason why did it take so long, and that's because of feature creep. And I think that's kind of the crux of what I really want to talk about, as I've been rambling on at the beginning here, is Hollow Knight Silksong's development schedule. Is this is this something to aspire to or copy or mimic? And I'm gonna say no. I think if anyone's in game development, whether it's big, AAA crap, or even if you're like a starving artist, struggling indie, wanting to make their mark on the world, I think the development cycle of Silksong in particular is not anything you want to copy at all. I think it's a terrible way to go about it, because what Silksong is doing is things that have ruined many big, larger productions that have way too much oversight, and that is feature creep. Feature creep is basically when you're developing a game and then someone, usually in a big, AAA project, someone higher up who doesn't actually have to do any of the actual coding, programming, development side of things goes, what's popular right now? This gameplay feature. Put a helicopter level in the game. So then we don't have any means or ability to do that. Nah, put it in. And feature creep is basically the dreaded development cycle where you keep having to add features to the game that originally were not part of it, or not planned, or not part of the design document, but someone decided, no, the game needs this to be successful. Now, the reasons for the feature creep in Silksong are literally just because, like, the very tiny development staff at Team Cherry was like, oh, I have this great idea, let's add it in. Okay, yeah, it sounds good, let's do that. They're just doing it as they personally thought something up, as the developers, as the main team that were doing pretty much everything themselves. We're like, hey, let's do this. Yeah, let's do that. And that's fine, but let's also go back to something from that Jason Schreier article about Silksong, which is, it is one of the most successful indie, Metroidvanias, or just indie games in general. It sold 15 million copies, and that was after a successful Kickstarter, to get the original game going. So you got 15 million copies sold at about $15 a piece. Granted, a lot of people have bought it for a lot cheaper. Even with, taking away the 30% from Steam and Nintendo eShop and whatever, these two dudes and their music composer from Hollow Knight, they walked away multimillionaires from the whole ordeal with Hollow Knight. They had the money and the means to basically feature creep their game. So again, if you're an indie dev, or if you're even just a developer in general, if you're a publisher and you're looking at, okay, what is Silksong doing? What did Silksong's development do that our games didn't do? How can we learn from this? And if you take away, like, oh, they should, like, every time they had a cool new idea, they implemented it, don't do that. That is a terrible way of going about development. And again, you only have the ability to do something like that when you have the luxury of being like an extremely tiny development staff, and you have millions and millions of dollars of wealth to just spread around and just keep yourself easily supported. This is kind of like doubly confirmed in a sort of like offhand comment that I've really found distasteful from Team Cherry personally, when they were talking about developing during the COVID pandemic and where they were in Australia, and how they were like, oh yeah, it seemed like, it's crazy to think all this bad, people were locked inside and we were still going to Sunday brunches and cafes. We didn't even notice it at all. Go, to quote Christian Bale, oh, good for you. As many of us lost many friends and loved ones, who died or got really sick. Like, I'm glad you were able to go to brunches and cafes. So rubbed me the wrong way. But it sort of seemed to highlight and exemplify the whole thing. I'm like, they live in a bubble, like literally live in a bubble, and they have millions and millions of dollars at their disposal. They can do this because they have the funding, they have the means to do this. Most indie developers, you won't have that. You don't have that luxury. You don't have that safety net. These guys can retire. They never even had to make Silksong. They could have just been scumbags, but they weren't. And just, hey, well, yeah, Silksong canceled. Development too hard in today's day and age. I'm going off into the sunset with my millions from Hollow Knight. They could have done that, but they didn't. They kept trucking along. They kept making the game they wanted to make, and that's great. And again, to kind of go the other way, I think it's very not noble, but like, it's very nice of them to keep the pricing basically to what it should be, what it was more or less promised to be, when it was just supposed to be DLC for Hollow Knight. Like, keeping it at $20, which is only $5 more than the original release, is great because, again, one, they didn't need the money at all, and two, they're still going to make millions and millions of dollars personally, even with the new hires, for Silksong. They're going to make plenty of money. They're all walking away millionaires in a couple days, or extra more millionaires from it. So if there's one thing we can learn from Silksong, here's what you should learn. Number one is price your stuff accordingly. Like, people have been anticipating this game for a long time. It's basically an IP franchise at this point. But it does look good. Hollow Knight's always looked good. And the thing that sort of made Hollow Knight a success was the word of mouth. And I can't stress enough how much word of mouth has become much more important today in today's age of influencers, content creators, and what have you. I can't stress enough how important it is now to do the whole word of mouth thing. And part of the way you get people on board, you got to look at games like Lethal Company and Peak and Repo. And what are these friend slop games? How are they so successful so fast? You know what? You want to know what one of the big secrets of these friend slop games and some of these other indie darlings? They're cheap. And I don't mean they're cheap as in like, oh, the games are cheap to play. I mean, like, they're literally cheap to buy. It doesn't cost, again, Hollow Knight came out at $15. Even when it came out, that was low end, extremely low end for the game, for any video game, even back when Hollow Knight first came out. $15 is pretty cheap, pretty low end. Silksong being $20 is still pretty cheap, pretty low end. Like, $20 is what it cost me to do the DLC for Kirby, Starcross World. And that was 12 very short but sweet levels. So, I mean, $20 is exactly what you should be charging. Again, some indies, not every indie can really afford this. Some people go, kind of really, into debt, hoping, and then they have to charge. They really need to charge more to try to make, back anything they can. They're so, they're so far in the hole. But if there's anything to be learned from this, is that you got to price your games accordingly, because people only have so much disposable income. And again, you're in a video game industry that has games like Fortnite, where if you look at the content that Fortnite provides and what you can do from a gameplay perspective, and all the different modes you can play and things you can do, and you have all that at your disposal, and you don't actually have to pay a dime. Like, what you can do within that ecosystem for free without ever spending a single dollar is insane. For another big, bloated, stupid AAA game that I no longer play, Warzone, Call of Duty Warzone. I spent exactly $2 and I think 50 cents in the 3 or 4 years or whatever it was that I actually played Warzone. And that was just to get like 2 extra COD bucks so I could get like the monkey skins, so the gorilla skins, I could throw people across the map. $2.50. That was as much as I ever spent on Warzone. So you got to really sit there and look at, like, okay, there are options in the game industry right now for people to get a huge, satisfying gameplay experience and spend no money. So when you're sitting there like, oh, well, we really need to charge $40 or $50 for this, you're kind of fighting against yourself in a way, because, again, price has an impact on people. You can sit there and be like, well, my game has so much value, it has so much going for it for $30. It might be true. And I think I've spent less on games that I feel are way more valuable. But at the end of the day, you kind of got to look at this. This is a luxury item. It's a luxury product in a world with increasingly less room for luxury products. And that's video gaming as a whole. So the one lesson you really should learn from Hollow Knight is price accordingly. They did it with the first game. They're doing it with Silksong, and it's going to... It's paying off for them. Again, most people are not going to be as talented as Team Cherry. You're not going to be. Most people will not have the talent of Silksong. They're not going to have that usually. But at the end of the day, I've said this before. There is a lot of really great Metroidvanias that aren't at Hollow Knight's level necessarily, but they're still very good. And again, if you're pricing them, accordingly, cheaply, there's a lot more incentive to jump in and impulse buy. Again, we live in a world where like $5 footlong is like considered some boomer shit in the past. That's ancient technology. It costs like $15 to get a sub, a sub sandwich from Subway nowadays. So if you could price your game at the price of a sub sandwich, that's value, because you're gonna have the game forever. So. And then the other thing is that, okay, so release timing. Again, I do think that being a little more forthcoming with your game is better. Most, again, I say this to all indie and regular AAA whatever publishers, developers. Don't follow Silksong's example of feature creep, but also, and as long as you're not doing that, I think being a little more forthcoming. You don't have to have trailers and footage and gameplay and directs and deep dives all the time for a game constantly is in development. But I think just having a general like, hey, we're here, we're still going. Here's a quick screen grab from from a build station or something. I think that's fine. I think you definitely should be a little more in the loop, because we've also seen this go the other way, where a game doesn't get a lot of updates and we all kind of start wondering what's happening with it, or it goes radio silent for too long and then you kind of lose all your momentum. Hello, multiverses. So yeah, you can screw yourself out of things by going like, oh no, we're just gonna go radio silent and we're gonna have this blitzkrieg. Right now, the games media market right now is sort of obsessed with the short turnaround. I mean, short-term gains in the stock market, short turnaround in the marketing. Most people kind of want to announce their game 3 months in advance and then just kind of like, okay, it's coming out in 3 months and we'll have an update next month, and then we'll have a big update like in 2 months, and then the game will be out. Boom, big bang boom, done. And I think that's a little bit also of a mistake, because if you don't know what else is going on, you get in situations where we're living in right now, where there's about 111,000 fucking games coming out in September and October of 2025. And they all did this because they were all fucking terrified, mostly, of GTA 6. Everyone thought GTA 6 coming out in November. We got to get our shit out in October or September. Everyone fucking bum rushed that. Obviously, not every game's going to be a result of that, but you live in this era now where it's like, okay, everything just piled on top of each other. And because nobody wanted to actually reveal any release dates until June, everyone ended up, oh, well, you're October? You're October 15th. I'm October 15th. You're September 4th. I'm September 4th. What? Oh, uh-oh. Suddenly, nobody has room to buy every single game coming out. Suddenly, millions of copies of games that might have been purchased when they didn't have a lot of other shit coming out at the same time are suddenly going to have to be sacrificed or put on people's back burners to get to at some later date. So again, this whole thing where people don't want to talk about release dates until 3 months, maybe 6 months if we're lucky. People don't want to talk about release dates until right before it's ready to come out. This is also going to bite a lot of you in the ass. It's going to bite indies, and it's going to bite big-time publishers straight in the ass this September, this October, this month, and next month. You're going to get bit in the ass because, frankly, as a person who has, I still purchase with my own money most of the games that I play and stream here. This is, I still, there's going to be games I have to give up. I'm sorry. Like I have to make sacrifices. I have to make decisions here. One decision that like I didn't plan on playing Silksong because it just been in development for so long, and I just sort of lost interest. When it was like, hey, it's $20, all of a sudden, I'll tell you this right now, there's a lot more interest on my part to try Silksong now at $20 than if it was releasing at $30 or $40. So suddenly a game that was like, even if it does shadow drop, I'm not really interested. Wait a minute, it's only this much? Maybe I'll rethink this a little bit. So take it from me, someone who's actually still a paying customer here. Yeah, like price can definitely have a factor, but also it's a really, really good idea to let people know when your shit's coming. And again, this is a little on Silksong as well. Like by doing this, hey, we're going to announce the release date 2 weeks out. All those other games that announced their release date 3 months out now have to panic and push theirs. Again, we've had a couple games already, at least 2 that I can think of, push the release date back further into September because they know they're going to get destroyed by Silksong if they released on September 4th or 5th. So there you go. Once again, we're in a point where releasing, holding your information too long, and everyone is like, oh, well, everyone was kind of releasing at the same time. The industry is cannibalizing itself a little bit here. And that's really unfortunate because we live, the day and age we live in, thousands and thousands of people have lost their jobs in game development just in the last 2 years, 2-3 years. And having the game industry cannibalize each other with release dates like this isn't doing any favors, because all it leads to is, oh, well, game didn't meet expectations, and this industry is an industry that cannot tolerate one single failure. The minute your game underperforms, that is the death knell of your entire studio. And we've seen that happen over and over and over and over and over again. So everyone kind of holding the release dates close to the chest. Everyone just announcing it 3 weeks or 3 months ahead of time, and then oops, all video games. We all plan to release our game at the same time so we could avoid GTA 6. Guess what? You just hurt yourself even further. So, lessons to take away here. Be more forthcoming with your release date. Give people time to plan and schedule, their their wallets around your game releasing. Also, price accordingly. People don't have that much spending money anymore. Ask the Zoomers and Gen Alphas. They really don't have that kind of money anymore. You're competing against a lot of really good free-to-play games. So price accordingly, plan accordingly, and also do not think, more importantly here, if you're on the development side, don't think you're getting away with Silksong's development cycle. You don't have that kind of money. You don't have that kind of luxury. You can't go radio silent for years. You can't feature creep for years. You can't do that. Just about nobody else can really do this. You need to have that sort of unobtainable success that the first Hollow Knight had. Just, if anything, admire it. Be jealous of it, but don't try to copy this, because it's just gonna lead to some heartache there. So that's all I got to say about Silksong. Coming up this week, I don't know. Maybe I'll be playing it. We'll see. But again, this is just sort of my rambling, real talk, real thoughts on Silksong, coming out this week. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you on the channel later, dudes.